It's usually Aman, but you can call me Aman.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome back, everyone, for another
Just a man.
episode of This is Learning. I have a guest here. I look like I'm the only panelist today, so it'll just be you and me, Aman. Why don't you tell everybody who you are, what you do, and what we're going to be chatting about today?
Yeah, Jay, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. Actually, I want to break this news that this is my first podcast, actually. I have done, a recorded version of videos, conversion, and all that. But this is like the actual first podcast. I want to do it for a while, but here we go. We start from somewhere. So
Great.
yeah, so like I don't know the format or anything, but I'll be like what I feel like is I'm always open and transparent about what I do and what I feel, and I think that's the most direct way of telling somebody how to get things done instead of sugarcoating or using a book language. Anyways, so my name is Aman Sharma. I am a maker and a builder based out of India, and I'm a serial tech entrepreneur. I worked with a lot of teams to build startups from zero to one. And usually, like this is not what how I define myself. Like what people say is that I can build things incredibly fast, whether it's about MVP or proof of concepts or about like scaling users from zero to million users, and also do things kind of like in India we have a famous term called as jugaad, which is more like a hacky way of doing things, and
Mhm.
that's where I'm really like good at, where I can like so there was this interesting thing that I built my own CDN in just overnight because Cloudflare was not able to provide what we needed. So I set up my own Nginx script, set up my own Varnish cache, a Docker containerized script. So like those kind of things. Currently, I am Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at Twimbit, which is a Singapore-based research firm turned out immersive development platform for business leaders.
Awesome. Wow. Seems like you have quite a bit of experience. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, so we have that in common. Currently working at a startup. I also love to build things hacky, but one thing I think a lot of entrepreneurs and other technology people have found this after a while is that you can build things hacky to a certain point, but then at some point those hacky solutions like kind of stop working or they don't work super well. So in your experience, excuse me, what like obviously there's no general rule for this is when you stop doing that and this is when you start building things correctly all the time. Like that's not a realistic expectation. But when you have started to realize that your hacky startup, I built this overnight to serve the market and make a sale kind of thing. How did you go about swapping from that sort of let's just get it done, move on to the next thing to, okay, let's build this so we know we don't need to come back and fix it next month?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, and like I'm already excited. Like we are starting from this kind of questioning. So, well, I will say that I'm quite experienced in terms of like leading high technology teams. If you're talking about like scale of 100 engineers and all that, so I still haven't seen that nightmare situation. Uh, but from my experience, like I have seen huge plunge in users, and thanks to today's system architectures, there's not a lot of actually what we need to do in terms of scale. So, for example, a simple thing is like you can host your application, front-end application with Vercel, and you don't need to even like think about what is the DDoS or like front-facing, user traffic you have to manage about. But how I actually explain it is basically building things on the fly and then worrying about it later. The important thing for startup is to build the right thing at the right time. That's the most important. That's the primary difference between Apple, Google, and a startup. That they have the ample amount of time. They have a fixed day on which they have to launch, and they have already established a brand market. Now they just need to sustain it. But a startup is still trying to prove itself that this is what we do, and you should buy our product. So that involves a lot of experimentation, product market fit, POC, MVP. And if we build something that is strong, behemoth, but nobody's going to use it, then there is no point in building it. So once you figure out like, okay, this is what user want, even you have validation, like more like a gut feeling that this is going to work, then you need to start doubling down in terms of like scale and all that. And how I consider is like the most important resource for any startup. If you are funding and everything, it's fine. But most of the time, the situation is like you are bootstrapping and you are always running low on cash flow. So you cannot ask your team where they are already trying to figure out like how to bring sales and all that. You can go with them that, hey, uh, we want to set up this amazing AWS setup, and this is going to be this much expensive. And also, we would like to have a system architect and all that. Like, of course, that looks good on paper, and if you go through technology books, that's what they would recommend. But the resources are really judicious. So what really matters is like you build it, and once you think about like it's I think a good feeling that your website crashed because there were 1 million users, because you proved a point, and
Exactly.
it happened
Yeah.
with a lot.
Yeah.
And when you have 1 million users, I think you can get any engineer to work because they are also keen and want to work with the products that have proven grounds. So that's my way of building things. And of course, like I'm really inspired by one of the Naval's quote that a lot of engineering talent is wasted just because we are building things and we are not sure about if people are going to use it. So I say like always figure out like if the product market fit is right, your MVP is good, people love the product, let it crash, and then once you are sure, then go about scaling.
Totally. One of the things that I have noticed and come across, let's call it in my journey of entrepreneurship, is that people always think, well, if I build it, they will come, right? Like I'll build the solution that I think is needed, and then people are just going to come to use it because it's valuable, and it's like not how it works in the real world, unfortunately. Obviously, like there are cases where that can be realistic, um, rare cases, but cases nonetheless, right? um, but you're right, like a lot of stuff gets built without doing the trying to find product market fit, building proof of concepts, selling to people. Hell, some companies sell to customers before the product even exists, right? Once they get sales, then they go and build it, kind of thing, right? One of the, I wouldn't call it a rule that we have at Trellis, the company that I co-founded that I work at right now, but one of the things that we do is we build things that customers ask for, right? So we're a fundraising platform for charities, and if they're like, this would help me raise more money for my charity, and it's like, cool, okay, we'll put it in the product roadmap because we know someone's going to use it. And if this big charity's using it and they find a good usage for it, we're sure other people are going to want to use it as well, right? So it's kind of like we have like built-in product market fit because the customers are telling us what we need to build to serve their purpose. I don't work at a charity. I'm not an expert. They are, right? And at the end of the day, they're the ones paying us. So I think that you brought up a really good point around wasted resources building things that the customer, the one paying, doesn't necessarily need.
Absolutely spot on. And I think it's easy for makers and builders to get attached with the product. And that's where things go wrong. You should never ever love your own product. You should love the problem. I remember a famous VC like who is in my inner circle who always I go for like whenever I need technical mentorship. He said to me directly this thing that Aman, never love your product, never love your solution. And I was like, what is this? Like, isn't that important? That's how I build stuff. He said like, imagine it like this: a person who is trying to find the cure for cancer, right? That's the problem that he needs to love. And then maybe you would invent a drug, you would invent a machine and all that. That is not important. Solving the problem is really important. And I was actually in that dilemma as well, that I would build amazing blazing fast website and say, this is amazing. Go team, check out. Like, that's independent technical co-founder. That's what we have. Like, we want to build things and then we want to like show off a little bit with the team. And I used to do that a lot. But then that was taking a lot of energy and I was not talking with the customers, which I actually should be doing. And then I focused and pivoted this thing like 2 years ago and become something called as a feedback magnet. It's like the technical co-founders are the most closest to the product. And that's a very important situation to be. You're close to the data. You know where the hits are coming in. You can A/B test fast and all that. The non-technical people don't know that much. They are more involved in the business. So it's your spot. Don't love the technology or the product. Love the problem and find new ways, as you were saying, either through Net Promoter Score, having a live interaction, feature flagging, or having Discord servers and all that. There are so many tools available today, and I think that's the best way to be in. And then you are building exactly what the customer wants, and that's complete love.
Yeah. So then that begs the question: if you're only building the things that the customers want, where does innovation come in? Where are you building the new things that, after a while, when you start to become somewhat of an expert in the problem that you're solving? Like, for example, we've built a software platform for charities. We're not charity workers, but over the course of the lifetime of the company, we have become somewhat experts in the charity industry because we know so much about it, know so much about how it works, who works in it, the methods, all that kind of stuff, right? But we can't just let the tools stagnate, right? We need to innovate. We need to build new solutions that's going to push the industry forward. But you might necessarily be building something that they don't want, but that they will want, right? But like, there's this line, because you don't want to innovate at the start, because now you're selling something to them, being like, believe me, no, believe me, you do want this. Trust me, you want this, but like, you have no ground to stand on, right? So like, where does innovation come in all of this too?
I think Jay, probably you know better answer than me, but I'll just try to have a shot on this. Well, I think 90% of time, the products that we are building are usually falling in two categories. Like if we are not innovating things like landing rockets on a remote, rocket ship, robotic ship, that's like a elite level of innovation. I think we are not going in that science yet. But other than that, there would be two kind of situations. Either you are trying to do something that is being done by companies at a large scale, and they are using that system internally, and you are trying to make it available to a small creator community or a small startup community. So, like for example, you brought a very excellent point, and I think charity or fundraising has been around like for many years, and probably people are doing it using manual systems, right? And let's say a company as big as even government for sake, they are raising funds. Taxation is raising fund system, and the whole IRS system is built around it, right? So they have some kind of manual system, but we need to make it so low level that anybody can actually do that. I remember that there is this famous story about Square Up. It's a company based in US, and they kind of help mom and pop barber shops to actually be available to a lot of them. Anyway, so Tony and Guy and all these big barber salon, they have internal software to actually manage appointments and all that. So what this startup actually did was they just replicated that startup and brought it down to the scale of individual mom and pop shops or individual creators. That is one niche of startups. When you are doing that, then it's very easy. You just need to prioritize like what features people want first. So you build for the people. And the second one is basically there is a manual way of doing it, but it's so lethargic and it's so labor intensive that the company is not able to scale that well. Usually the scale of that business is linear, and you want to introduce your tool or technology that would exponentially change it. So, for example, blogging website existed for a long period of time, and what usually a blogger used to do was that he used to set up his own website and all that. That was a linear system, and always a developer is involved. So what Medium, Hashnode, Dev.io did was you don't need to worry about that. I'm just replicating exactly the same process, but I'm automating it, which is SSL generation, caching, or what do you say, recommendation system and all that. So that is the second type of conversion that usually comes in. And I think innovation is just the speed of converting all these things from a slow way into a fast way. I think that's how I define as innovation. And then there is 10% other kind of innovations where you really are dreaming, or maybe you're on mushrooms and you're thinking about, oh, this could be a crazy one. Let's build it up.
Yeah, totally. I think I definitely agree with you wholeheartedly there. It all comes back to what you're saying earlier, where you said love the problem, right? Like if you are always thinking about the problem you're trying to solve, then the solution is what you're selling, but the problem is what you're solving, right? So you can find new solutions for the same problem, right? So innovate in the solution area to help them solve the problem in a better way, faster way, more effective way, like all that kind of stuff, right? But don't try and innovate them away from the problem they're trying to solve, because that's when you're going to get
Absolutely.
people
Like,
like, mm,
absolutely.
oh,
So
yeah,
it's not work. Cost, speed, and scale are three constant problems. Like whatever you build, they can always be dominated. Like others, like most of the startup either say this will help you scale better, right? This is what you were doing, and now you can do this. Or the speed, you were going at the speed of 40 kilometers per hour, and now our car makes it 80 kilometers per hour. Or cost, right? So apart from these three, I don't think technology innovation actually can do any of the scope. Even like you see the example of like landing rockets and all that. It's ultimately reducing cost, speed, and efficiency, right? So I mean, like, but the problems that humanity has would always remain the same until we are same humans, and until we don't become like, okay, now we need some extra things to worry about.
yeah, totally, 100%. So many examples of what we just talked about in like my experience as an entrepreneur, both examples that worked and examples that didn't work. Like I've been on both sides of the coin where it's like build things and they will come, and versus like go talk to the person, go and find a charity worker and be like, tell me what you do. Explain to me how you would solve this problem, and then they tell you and you're like, whoa, I can make this a lot better. And then you go and build that thing, and then you go back to them and say, do you want a solution that's going to cost you 10% of what you're currently paying, and you'll get it done quicker? And they're like, obviously, yeah, totally, right? So like it's such a huge range of like the earlier you are in your startup journey, entrepreneur journey, whatever you want to call it, right? The more you kind of want to default to that, well, I have this idea and I'm going to build this idea, right? But you really do need to do customer discovery and try and find product market fit. A product market fit obviously comes a little bit later, like when you actually have something to sell. But customer discovery is huge, right? Talk to the people that are going to be paying you.
Yeah, but what I'm still in a dilemma, and I don't know if I'll be able to answer it any soon. There is always this tug of war between you identify a problem and you go back. Now you want to build it fast, right? But it takes time to build good things. It's also evident. Like you cannot just rush things, right? You can have a super awesome technical team, but still it would take at least a month. And till that month, now you think that, oh, I think this is a more priority problem, right? So, and until that time, like customer space is like, if you're constantly listening to them, then of course the new problem is going to sound way more sexy than the previous one. So
Yeah.
how do you like balance between this? Like, how does a person settle down? Oh, let me solve this first.
Yeah. So we call that recency bias, where something that's more recent seems, more important, more imperative. Like someone complained about this yesterday, we gotta fix it, kind of thing, right? Even though maybe that problem will just kind of go away because it's just like maybe it's an edge case, or maybe for any number of reasons, right? Or someone is running, in our example, someone's running a fundraising event next week, and they're like, we would use Trellis if you had this feature. And it is so tempting to just throw the team at that feature and build it for next Thursday, kind of thing, right? So tempting. And we've done it before. Like we've done it numerous times, right? Because as a startup, you need to make sales, right? But once there's a point in a company where like you have to consider the long-term impacts of doing that and think, okay, well, we have so much opportunity. Well, hopefully you have lots of opportunity as a startup, right? Hopefully you've done it well enough up until now that you have this like breadth of opportunity in front of you, and you can't do it all. You have to pick. So then you really need to sit down and think, okay, what is going to serve us best long term, but weighing the fact that you need to be successful till then for, any number of reasons. Say you're raising money. You're raising money for like your company, getting investment. If you don't show any growth for the next year, but you've been building things for after that year, you're gonna have a hard time raising funds for your company, right? But if you only build things for the short term and you're not set up for success in the long term, once you raise the money, it's going to be a lot harder for you to scale and operate, right? So there's this like balance you need to find of what do we need to do now so that we keep growing the company, keep finding product market fit, keep talking to our customers, make sure we're doing the right things, but also make sure we're at least sort of set up for success at the end of this, whatever that time period might be. So it's very difficult, and I don't think there's a single answer. It's so hyper dependent on your business, your industry, your technology team, right? Like how much resources can you throw at the short-term problems or short-term opportunities, call them, right?
Yeah, I think the technical term for that is Moonshot and Shot projects. And Google uses this very well. Like they have two kind of projects. One are the roof shot projects, which are things required to run the current cash flow, to show growth to the investors, and also to make things actually getting shipped up, right? What they are doing with Chrome browsers or bubble wrap and all the small projects. And then the second one is like the moonshot projects, which are long term, and they think that would be very good for the future growth of the company. They're investing in ML, they're investing in like Web3 also, probably internally they would be doing and experimenting something. And I think the way to handle that is to give equal ownership in the team, not treating them as employees, but treating them. And this is specifically important for like startup culture, because the same culture gets replicated like when once you scale 2,000 employees. If you give the equal opportunities and let them balance between the moonshot and roof shot projects themselves, it would keep them excited as well. It would be a self-incentivization thing, and you don't need to worry about that. Okay, you have to solve all the problems, but for that you need a lot of trust from both sides. It's not just like you are expecting trust from them. They need to trust you as well, right? Because otherwise there would be always, oh, I invented this, right? Would I be doing like, then you will be always in that entrepreneurial dilemma that maybe I should build it outside, right? So making everybody feel part of the problem, give them equal ownership, not just in terms of like the naming rights and all that, but like ultimately it's not it's a positive sum game, right? I believe in like positive sum games a lot. Like ultimately at the end of the day, what we want to do is to create abundance for humanity, and it doesn't matter who does it, right? So you in a startup are just providing a set of institution or a vehicle where a culture can run. That's how I define like what basically a company is. And then maybe today they are solving problem for 2G, tomorrow they will be solving problem for Web3. Doesn't matter, right? One main vision is around like solving one certain criteria problem, and then you make some important decision in terms of what kind of culture it will be. People can own things, and then you don't need to worry about right now. For example, this incident happened. Like I remember one of my colleagues, he had a very important home emergency. I don't know, like that's the kind of trust we have, that they don't share like what problems they have. I want them to, but they are like, we take ownership. We don't care about like we don't share excuses. Anyway, so there was this major, what do you say, downtime for the website and all that. I wasn't available because I was like completely out of internet region, and he was available. It was midnight, and he had like some important emergency. He already took a leave and everything, but because he was personally invested in it, he was the one who brought the whole startup idea. I didn't worry about that. Okay, I need to delegate things, and the customer is going to face downtime until the next morning, and that automatically got handled. So I mean, that's the best way if you can create that culture. It's hard to do that, and again, but if you do it, that's the best one.
Totally. And I think there's an important distinction between creating a sense of ownership, maybe not creating, fostering a sense of ownership, right? Because I don't want to mandate things. I don't want to say, you need to care about this to work here, right? I want my team, like I manage the tech team. I'm the CTO. I don't really manage the sales and marketing. My business partner does, but we have the same philosophy in that we want everybody in the company to feel like they have a sense of ownership over it. They care about it, right? It's not required to do these things above and beyond. But some of my coworkers do, right? They go above and beyond in some aspects because they really do care. They care because they helped create the software out of nothing, right? They care because the software is, helping to innovate the charitable industry and make an actual positive impact in the world, right? Like it cannot be underestimated how important it is for your team to enjoy where they're at, right? Like we've had when I've done interviews in the past to hire people, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but the people that tell me I just want a paycheck, I don't really care about the solution. You need code written, I'll write the code. And it's like, cool, I respect that. Like not everyone wants to be involved in the actual, direction of the company. We give our coworkers a say in the direction of the company in some respects as well, right? Some people don't want that. That's totally fine. But because of the work that we're trying to do with, making a positive impact on the world, we want people that, care about trying to make a positive impact on the world, right? If they're awesome coders, great, 2 for 1, right? We get the best of both worlds, and they do exist out there, right? But I think it's really important to not require those things, but rather build them over time, right? Like when you hire someone, don't say, you need to care about this and you need to be invested in this. And I'm going to ask you about where you think the company should go. And you need to do this as part of your job. That's not the way to do it, right? Foster that sense of ownership, like you said, right? Over the product and the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, like how I define it is like it's the hiring and recruitment, as you brought up, is very, very important. And I think until you are sure that, okay, this is our culture, the founder himself should recruit. That's the most important thing that a founder is actually doing. And a lot of people, I think, overskip this process. They're like, we want to be sales facing or we need to be product facing and we'll hire a HR or recruiter and we'll do that. That's not going to, like, I think, scale well. I've seen companies doing that. And then that becomes a more like a pyramid structure in which you need managers and managers. I don't like that kind of startups. And I don't think that those kind of startups are 21st century startups. What you really need is basically how I define it as like if the company's vision overlaps the person's personal aspiration, then you have constant motivation, right? You don't need to host any other hurdle. You don't need to come, hey, let's do this event, let's do this flashcard event, let's do this group talk. You don't need that. If the person's personal life goal aligns with what the company wants to do, it automatically will do it. And I think now in terms of remote work, it's even much easier. You have like set up a lot of good social media presence for yourself, and like you talk constantly about charities and all that. Probably there would be a lot of people who are engineers as well and also care about community or positive sum games, right? And that's going to be your first preference over somebody who is much more experienced or even much more proficient in that, because ultimately maybe that person is amazingly well in coding, but maybe you would never are able to see that, right? Because that person will only do the things that you will tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Give them the space, right? It's like give them the space to contribute in a way that they're going to feel like they helped, right? Like we have a bunch of juniors on the team. But those juniors have built entire products within the company completely by themselves. Guess who feels the sense of ownership over those products? They do, right? They're proud of it. They look at it being used by charities and nonprofits and think, I did that. I am proud of that, right? And that's just, as a founder and, you know, a leader in the company, that's just my favorite thing to see.
Absolutely. And of course, like because of this hustle culture that is existing now, a lot of VCs are putting in money into like cool technologies and all that. And then there is this huge swap of like, okay, whoever pays first, I'm going to work there, kind of culture. And then like engineer salaries are going way more high. It totally doesn't make sense. I would say like I won't rightfully think that I should earn that much. It doesn't make sense. The startup is not making that much money. How can an engineer earn it? And I think it's important for engineers also to see that it's good, like you can earn a lot, right? But what are you here for? Are you here to just earn right now, or you are here to like build something that is going to last long, right? If you want to run fast, then run alone. If you want to run long, then run together, right? And for that you need to believe in the product. You need to have people. A lot of I think young teens in their like 20s forget about this thing. They are very cocky about their skills. They're cocky about like, you know, I have done this contributions, I have done this blog and all that. I'm getting this much paycheck, 100K and all that. I'm just going to go with that. And then suddenly at their 30s, they feel like, oh, that's tied on. And it's like, I don't think my salary is going down and my whole career is going down. It's more important to compoundly create products that is going to be attached with you forever, right? Even if you are like done with the company or something, somebody uses that feature and says, hey, that's an amazing feature. I really appreciate the guy who built it. And somebody who's just coming for the money, he will never feel that, devotion. It's like how I define to my engineers as well. Like, no matter how amazing a product you will build, let's say you are like somebody is driving a fast car at a speed of 100 or something, and he crosses a bridge. If the engineering is done perfectly well, nobody will notice anything, right? And they will just enjoy the view and everything. But if it was just a small loose joint or something, and there was a small bump, they will curse the engineer. They will be like, "What did you do this?" And that's what engineer life is. You do things not just okay, you will get a lot of reward or praise, but you do things because you love solving problems, you love optimizing solutions, you love making it more efficient. And I think I'm always looking out for those people. I'll be okay if he's still in the learning process. Like, you know, code is something that could be learned, and it's becoming more easier and easier how to scale applications. It's the abstraction layer. But I would always prefer on any day a person who is self-motivated and encouraged to do solve these problems, rather than somebody who is like 5x fan engineer or something.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. We're over time, it looks like, a little bit. I know you're way ahead of me, so you probably want to go to sleep soon. I got to start my work day.
That's the founder journey, you know. It was lovely, you know, talking to you. And I have my own notes that I have to go back, pat, and like, you know, some of the shoulders who are still, like, you know, working night, and like, I have to go see those people. It's a reminder.
Totally.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. It was awesome chatting with you. Hope we get to do it soon. Yeah, any last thoughts about startups and, you know, how to survive before we end the show?
No, I don't think that somebody needs a very foolproof plan. Screw it, just do it. That's what I would define as like startup. Just you won't know until you just get there. You just build it, and then
Agreed.
That's it.
Yep. Just give it a shot. See how it goes.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for coming. We have another episode booked, I believe, next week on the 18th, talking about security awareness. So hope to see you there. Keep a lookout on our Twitter for it. And have a good Friday. See ya.